Coming up on today's episode of Parasport Nation, Paralympic champion wheelchair racer Austin Smeenk is here to talk about his year so far and reflect on the Paralympics. Let's get started.
Welcome to Parasport Nation with Alex Smyth and Nathan Clement.
Welcome into PSN. I'm your host, Alex Smyth, as always, joined by co-host Nathan Clement. Nathan, how are you doing, sir?
I am doing fantastic, Alex. Had an amazing Canada Day week and weekend on the bike, so I can't complain. How was your Canada Day?
You know, it was busy, but also relaxing at the same time. A bit of a oxymoron. I relaxed in the pool, had people over, had barbecue. I can't complain. It was an awesome time. Almost as awesome as our guest coming on today's program. We have a jam-packed interview with Austin Smeenk. No time to waste. Let's jump into it. Here's our conversation with Paralympic champion Austin Smeenk. Austin, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me on. Pleasure to be here.
Well, it's great to have you. You are coming off a pretty successful trip to Paris a few weeks ago. Have you had time now to reflect on that competition, and how are you feeling when you look back on your trip to Paris?
I have had some time to kind of unbox it, so to say. It was a fantastic trip. I was actually in Switzerland. So most of the Canadian team came to Switzerland first, and then a bunch of us went on to compete in Paris. And I stayed in Switzerland and went to a very wheelchair racing specific track meet in a town called Arbonne. It hosts one of the fastest tracks in the world, and it tends to be the spot that wheelchair racers get together and throw down some pretty solid times and world records. So the trip was fantastic. I am, very pleased with how it went, but I am also so grateful for the opportunity to race there, just because these meets really allow us as athletes to just check in and see how our training is going. So, we hang out in our training environment, we push crazy numbers here, we do tons of stimulus from a wider range of stuff, be that in the gym, be that on the track, be that pushing up a hill, going out on what we call the Galloping Goose. It's a trail here in Victoria. It's a beautiful bike path that's rail grade and paved for rollerbladers to have a great time. And, those different stimulus allows us to try and drive the maximum amount of adaptation. And then we think we know what we're doing, and then we need to go and race and see if we're actually smart and know what we're doing. So going to Europe and being on one of those fast tracks with some of the best athletes in the world is a fantastic checkpoint for us. And, it's been a lot of fun to go there, race, and kind of see how we're doing.
Austin, you are an absolute beauty, and thank you for joining us today. Throughout your career, especially going back to Rio, Tokyo, you've had a very lengthy and storied career, but you've really found success in the last couple years. What do you contribute that to?
It's all a matter of environment. That is simple, plain and cut. It's, I spent the majority of my career living in my hometown with my mom and dad, family friends around, high school buddies nearby. And while that does give itself or lend itself to, some fun opportunities for good weekends up in cottage country in Muskoka, or, out on Lake Ontario with my family on our family sailboat, those things all take away from the recovery profile. So, inherently I knew that it was somewhat wrong as well, that the training volume and load that I was doing left me with enough energy to go out and have fun in the evening. And having fun in the evening also takes away from whatever recovery you can do when you're going out and, hanging with friends. But when I came out to Victoria, it was like one of the first times in my life that I looked at a training plan and went, I'm going to do what? And at the end of it, I was so exhausted that, like, if somebody said, hey, do you want to come to hang out this evening? Even if I hadn't seen that person in 2 years, I'd have to tell them, like, I have no energy left. Like, I am exhausted. So being on the other side of the country from your family and friends is difficult, but it lends itself to an incredible opportunity to really lean into the training that you can do, and then to complement that with a high level of recovery, which just lets you, try your best to wake up the next day and do it again.
Well, and part of that new environment, I'm sure, includes your coach, Jeff Harris, who we had on the program a few weeks ago. Can you talk a bit about the role he's played in your development and your success?
Yeah, Jeff is an incredible human. He's a 2012 Olympian, 800-meter runner. His knowledge of being a track athlete has just commanded respect from me from the first time I met him. And, you don't necessarily say that that's the end of the story. It's that he has such a great curiosity for trying new things, and him working with me and a few other wheelchair racers really in the last 5, 6, 7 years or so. It's crazy how fast time flies, but it lends him to not having any old bad habits. We're not doing old workouts that we saw somebody do really well after doing this workout and that happened in 2004. It's like, okay, let's just try all this stuff and see what we can do. And then, Jeff also is, with his curiosity, he's not stuck in the let's do this one way and my way or the highway. It's a very much a collaboration with everyone around him, and he is a very smart guy, but one of his strengths is looking to the other smarts in the room and that are around him. So we're hanging out training here at Canadian Sport Institute, where we're around guys from cycling, we're around guys from rowing, we're around guys from rugby, powerlifting, boxing, you name it. And they all kind of sit around, and instead of just think like, yeah, you guys stay in your lane and we'll stay in ours, they sit around and go, how do you guys get your athletes to be better? And, oh, maybe that might work for my guys. And when you talk with guys from cycling, cycling is years, if not decades, ahead of wheelchair racing in terms of the technology, the research and development that's gone into optimizing different aerodynamics, different tire profiles, even down to the bearings that we use. So getting to chat with the guys from cycling and say, what kind of tire pressures do you run given this environment? And then to hear some of the feedback, which is actually counterintuitive, and hear them say, we've actually gone down in tire pressure and up in tire profile, wider tires, less pressure. And in your mind, it's like, well, when my car is a flat tire, it really doesn't work very well. But then you learn that in cycling, it's like, no, you're spreading the weight over a greater surface area. The tires are optimized to roll well at low pressure, and you actually don't sink into some surfaces like a rubber track or a Mondo track, the way a pizza cutter would. You just kind of ride on top of the surface. So just really having those guys around, and Jeff being so curious to learn from everybody that he interacts with, is something that sets him aside from, I think, all other coaches I've worked with. He's brilliant in his ability to fall asleep at night thinking about different ways to make people faster, but also different people that he could ask questions to.
I believe one of the first conversations you and I had in the Paralympic Village was actually talking about tire pressure. It's really amazing to have someone like Jeff a part of a program, because that was one of our biggest takeaways, was just his willingness to be curious, but also innovate the system. And you, with an engineering background and just the athlete that you are, and we've often talked off camera about how Paralympic sport is getting professionalized and how it's all coming down to the equipment, because that physical ability is at such a high level now. What I kind of want to know is, when you're on the track, every track varies from location to location. How do you play with your system, whether it's tire pressure, setup, build, leading from one race to another?
Yeah, very curious. Great question. So in a 100 meter, for example, you don't need to turn. You just go straight down the track. So you can actually run, because we know now that a tire with low pressure rolls better, you can run ultra soft tire pressures to the point where let me just put this do not disturb on so we don't get dinged out of here. So in a 100 meter, you don't turn. So you can run low tire pressure, whereas in an 800 meter, when you're going into a turn at 30 kilometers an hour, or 35, 36, 37, when that outside tire is low, the chair does not want to do the turn very much. It almost wants to roll that tire off of the rim. So between a 100 and an 800, you would change the outside tire pressure, for example. If you're on a road or doing a road race versus a track race, you're going to run a different tire as well so that you can have more puncture resistance. And aside from that, the equipment tends to stay similar. That being said, we are currently working on having variable seating positions that are specific to each race. So we've done a little bit of testing and figured out that my starts are actually a little bit better if I'm lower in the chair, and that enables me to have better 100 meters, better 100 meter time. But it's not as efficient as it is when I'm doing it for 800s. So we might go back to the position that I'm currently in, the position that I set the 800 meter world record in. We know that that's a very good, efficient setup that also lends itself to good top speeds, but it could be better in terms of the acceleration. So we tend to play around a little bit with the equipment here and there. Another consideration would be rain. If it's raining, the gloves that we use, there's a rubberized or a suede surface that we actually punch into the wheel with. And when you have rubber on rubber that's wet, it doesn't grip very well. So you would use suede on the gloves and keep rubber on the push rim in a rainy condition. And you really need to go through a couple years of environmental changes to figure out what works well for you. But there is definitely, a professionalization of parasport in the sense that, we are looking at the conditions of the track and then deciding what setup we're going to run.
You obviously mentioned in great detail, because I loved that response and just on how you've tweaked the equipment. But you also mentioned earlier about you were kind of racing on a fast track. First off, what does a fast track look like, and how does that impact your approach to a race if a track is faster or slower in your view?
So to the listeners and viewers, I want you to imagine rollerblading on carpet versus rollerblading in an airport where you have hard tile floors. One of them is going to be much more efficient and you're going to be able to glide and coast a lot easier. And the other one on carpet is going to be a lot more difficult to maintain speed on and accelerate in general. So in tracks, we have different styles of tracks. One of them is a rubberized track where they take a whole bunch of recycled rubber and they put it in a blender and then they put a glue in it and then they lay it down and press it flat. That's a rubberized track and it is fairly soft. So that would be like rollerblading on the carpet, for example. And on the other side of it is what's called a mondo track, which is essentially carpeted concrete. And the carpet that they're using, or the top surface that they're using, continues to improve as we develop better materials and science gets better and better, and they continue to push the boundaries of what is feasible with these track surfaces. And for us being on one of these fast, hard tracks, it means that we can roll smoother, roll more efficiently, and really have an opportunity to throw down some good times. So one of the important things that I want everyone to kind of digest is that you could not challenge a world record realistically on a slower rubber track. It's just not physically feasible. So when you have an opportunity to go and race at a fast track, it's everybody's ears kind of perk up and go, okay, like personal bests are on the table, world records are on the table, and championship records or Paralympic records, they're all on the table. It's really a big factor in the outcomes of the race when it's a timed event relative to everything else you've done. When you're competing against somebody or you're just racing for position, everyone's on the same track. So if we wanted to host, they wouldn't do this, but if they wanted to host a Paralympic final on a slow track, you could still win a gold medal, but you can probably not set a Paralympic record.
It's a lot like the same with pools, but kind of shifting directions. You've been able to travel to many parts of the globe throughout your career, and especially with athletics now, there's a lot of more combined events, like, for example, the Prefontaine Classic. Has there been any event or any track or stadium you haven't raced in yet that would be your dream spot to go to?
I really would like to race at the Zurich Diamond League. I think that one looks to be very quick and it looks to be a fantastic environment. Prefontaine looks really cool as well. And then, of course, Oregon. I mean, Oregon is Tracktown USA, and they fill stadiums with people all the time to watch track and field events. So that one's quite high on the list, I think.
For you, do you have a memory of a certain race or event that really stands out, being your favorite so far? Because, I mean, you've had a lot of memorable moments. You mentioned world records and medal finishes. Is there any that really kind of rise to the top in your mind?
I think that one that's very potent in my mind still, being that it's only really, July of 2025, and we had the Paralympic Games less than a year ago, would be my 800-meter final in Paris. That track was fantastic. The race was executed brilliantly. My fitness was at a place that's, at the time had never been before. And, I got everything I wanted out of that event. I think, that's an easy one for me. I mean, my first Paralympic gold medal, and with an iconic finish. It was great.
Yeah, hearing the backstory of that finish just makes it more and more special what you were able to accomplish in that race. And it was really incredible as like an athlete in the village to see you get the gold and all the medals that you got in Paris. Now, one of our favorite questions on the show, and I'm going to throw it at you, is do you have a favorite food destination that you've been to?
Favorite food, like in the world? I'm a massive fan of Italian food. I've never been to Italy, but I am a sucker for a pasta. In fact, most of my high performances have followed a penne marinara or a spaghetti bolognese, something of that fashion. And then I'm also a huge fan of sushi. So, when we were in Japan for 2021 Paralympics, we unfortunately were unable to go and explore Tokyo and find all of the good spots for authentic sushi. But I'm a massive fan of the sushi culture and Japanese eats, so to say. And I look forward to going back to Japan at some point for the food, and also would love to go to Italy in the hopefully not so distant future and have some authentic Italian.
Well, one thing, according to your Instagram, that you have been able to indulge in quite a bit is barbecue, which I certainly appreciate as a fellow barbecue lover. What is your go-to barbecue order or meal or food item that you always have to get?
So, being that, training in the gym 3 times a week requires quite a high protein consumption, I tend to eat a fair amount of barbecue, yes. And I'm a big fan of red meat, so I love a strip loin steak. I'm a big fan of chicken on the barbecue as well. I mean, it's You can overdo it if you forget about it, but if you're into barbecuing as much as I am, then you just stand there and look at your barbecue between flips, and you're pretty well on time when you do that. So yeah, chicken and steak on the Barbie, I mean, it's pretty banging.
Do you have a go-to spot in Victoria?
For to get barbecue specifically, there's a place that's in Langford. I think it's called Barbecue Langford, and it is fantastic. It's like, it has this American Roadhouse vibe to it, and yeah, I mean, you go in there and you can say, I'll have the platter, and it comes with like brisket, ribs, steak, chicken, the whole bit, and yeah, it's a fantastic smokehouse, so to say.
It sounds delicious. And Austin, we've kind of gone through the gambit with you. We talked about your races, your kind of your mentality, the adjustments you make. We've talked about food, but I want to end the conversation on this with you. What is this next year looking like for you? What's next for Austin Smeenk?
So it's been a really exciting year. You know, in the past, since the Paralympic Games in 2024, my fiance and I purchased a house. So this past weekend, we actually just moved into it, and it's been very exciting to, you know, go and buy a barbecue. I'm yet to build the barbecue, so I got to build a barbecue and set up some patio furniture and continue to unpack boxes. And then forward from that, and what's really on the list is we have a World Championships in New Delhi, India at the end of September. So that's what's ringing in my ears when I wake up and when I fall asleep, is how can I be best prepared for the upcoming championship, and really find new ways to try and really at the basic level be better at my sport. I mentioned at the beginning, training is about stimulus to drive adaptation. In 2023, I arrived in Victoria and thought, I'm going to do what on this training plan? And in 2024, we took that to a new level. In fact, a really great, easy to understand metric is that in March of 2024, I did everything I did in March in 2023 in the first week. So I more than quadrupled my mileage in March of 2024 compared to 2023. And that was, again, a place I didn't think there was a gain possible. And then you show up exhausted the next day and you're like, I'm tired. And you train and you get good results. And you go, wow, can't believe I got good results when I feel this way. And then you feel great the rest of the day, and you wake up the next morning and you're exhausted and you show up again and wow, I got great results. All of a sudden that snowballs and the mentality shifts to no matter what the circumstance is, barring injury, if we're not about to injure ourselves or create something that's a circumstance of overtraining, then you show up, you do the work, and you push yourself to a new level. Finding different ways to do that, be it in the gym, be it with the mechanical aspects of the racing chair and the equipment, or in the mental preparation, is all kind of what's next for me. Just finding new ways to get to the next level mentally, technologically, and physically.
Well, that's awesome, and we wish you the best of luck, and I'm sure we're going to be chatting again once September rolls around, once the World Championships are finished, and we'll be following how you and the rest of Team Canada will be doing then. So best of luck until then.
Appreciate that so much. Thank you for having me on, and Nate, you're such a beauty. Great to be on with you, man.
And that was our conversation with wheelchair racer and Paralympic champion Austin Smeenk. Fantastic interview. Tons to take away from that conversation, Nathan. Where do you want to start?
There's so much to break down. I just really think his attention to detail really stands out. And we were very lucky a couple weeks ago. We had his coach, Jeff Harris, on the show. And you can see a lot of like similarities between the two, how elegant they are when they speak, but also just Austin's attention to detail. And he's been in the sport for a long time, but he's constantly trying to find different ways to improve, find that next level. And how he emphasizes recovery is so key and so important. And one of the biggest things things to share to young athletes, but also veteran athletes like himself. So I just think overall, there's so much uniqueness to what he says, and just his attention to detail is phenomenal. Any big takeaways for you, Alex?
Yeah, how articulate and his ability to break down his kind of understanding and breaking down the ideas of, okay, what a fast track feels like, what a slow track feels like, how he's able to use his equipment and gather knowledge from, as he mentioned, cyclists, like maybe even yourself, talking about PSI pressure, things like that, going with these different avenues to really maximize performance and results was awesome. That's something I've always known about him and his story and his engineering background. But yeah, also him talking about how when he moved to Victoria in the training regimen and just how it elevated everything to another level. Talking about, oh yeah, if I can actually still go out and party after a day of training, I didn't train hard enough. And how, looking back, a year's difference from when he first started to being able to quadruple the results and the output from his training, that's huge. That's fantastic. That's what makes him a champion, being able to continue to push, get better, and the results speak for themselves. So that was certainly my biggest takeaway from the episode. It's always so much fun to catch up with him. I'm sure we're going to be doing it down the road as well, Nathan, but we're out of time. That's all the time we have on PSN today. Be sure to catch us next time. Thanks for watching and listening.
Thanks for tuning in to Parasport Nation. Like and subscribe to the channel to follow us now.